Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Heal, Nourish, Grow podcast. Today, I have my guest, Dr. Jane Levesque, and we tried to speak before and we were having some technical difficulties. So hopefully, knock on wood, this time will go smoothly. But I really wanted to have her on the show because she talks a lot about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and it has to do with fertility. So whether you're male or female, definitely stay tuned because it will affect somebody in your life that you know. And I'm looking forward to hearing how we can combat some of these things because I personally have I had issues in the past. I have 3 to 4 friends in my life right now that are either doing IVF or had trouble conceiving. So it is very widespread, unfortunately. So I'll let you take it from there. How'd you get into this work and a little bit on your background about why this became your passion?
For sure. So I'm a naturopathic doctor, and thank you for having me on the show. I'm so glad.
Yes, thanks for coming again. Yes.
But I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I kind of specialized in general medicine, IBS, anxiety, because it was very much my story. I felt very out of control from my body, from my health, and I felt like I couldn't impact. So, going through university, gained, instead of the freshman 15, probably gained about 25 pounds, always active, always focused on health. And then it didn't matter what I did, I couldn't lose that weight. And I knew that I was too young to have this as a permanent problem. Like there was something deep down inside of me that refused to believe that I was just going to be on a diet for the rest of my life, starting at, 20 years old or even younger. Like, I don't know. I think kids start to go on diets at like 12 now, thinking about it. So it's heartbreaking. Exactly. It's a society thing that I think if we work hard enough, we can absolutely break this thought pattern. But, I was on birth control at a time. I went to my medical doctor. Medical doctor said, nothing you can do about it. Birth control has nothing to do with it. You can be on it for forever. Basically, those are just, when it gets worse, then we can maybe, take this medication, or when it gets really bad, we can send you for more testing. But that was kind of the answer. And I wasn't satisfied with that because I was into nutrition and into fitness, and I knew that there was something off. And so it encouraged me to seek other answers. And that's how I got into naturopathy. After having kids myself and having the journey of, I thought pregnancy was going to be a breeze because I'm a naturopath. My husband and I own a CrossFit gym. So I work out. I used to be an athlete. I take my supplements. And that first pregnancy was just like a kick in, a slap in the face. Like I just couldn't believe how hard it was on my body, how uncomfortable I felt, how out of control I felt in my system. It was like this tiny little alien was controlling everything, right? I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep properly. I couldn't drive because I was so nauseous. I had to miss work. And then, the actual, when you get pregnant, really pregnant, and the labor, it was just like, why are we not talking about this? Like, why was there any amount of preparation to say, hey, you might have a hard time with this, and here are some things that you can do to prevent the illness that you're going to experience, or how to manage it? Because when you're pregnant and you're sick, it's very reactive, right? You're not thinking about, I'm going to, make a nice broth and this soup and this. You're just like, put something in my mouth that's going to get that nausea down and out, and so I can go back to work. And whether that's, some women now have to be on medication. I have friends who had to take work leave for, over a month. And to me, it was just like, that can't be the only way that we bring children into this world. And so I started to do things differently for my second pregnancy. The second pregnancy actually ended in a miscarriage, which was another slap in the face. But, I really thought like I had it figured out. And I think that was like the universe telling me that, hey, you know what, like maybe you don't have it all figured out, and you have a little bit more compassion and understand that there isn't just a physical component to getting ready for a pregnancy, but there is a mental and emotional component as well. And it's actually, in personal experience and clinical experience now, it outweighs sometimes the physical stuff. So we want to be aware of all of these pieces because you're bringing a life into the world, and you're trying to bring a life into the world. And so when we're stuck, I had a miscarriage, shared it with the world because I was sharing my pregnancy because I obviously didn't expect to have a miscarriage. And all these women started to share their stories, how they had no support. Their doctor told them to have at least another 2 miscarriages before they can get any amount of testing or any kind of help. And which is the same thing I was told. And I felt very fortunate to say, hey, I can run my own lab work. I have colleagues that I can ask for help. And, obviously you pay out of pocket, but at that point it's like, who cares? Let's figure this out. Let's solve this issue. And, I have family members, I have friends who struggled with infertility. And so I just I don't want to say I fell into it, but it was just like, I started helping these women, and then the results spoke for themselves. And, here I am like, okay, let's help more women. Let's talk about this. Let's give people options. Let's give couples options. Let's educate them and help them understand what are some precursors of them struggling with infertility so they can get ahead of it, or some of the ways that you can support your infertility, your fertility journey. I don't like to say infertility, your fertility journey naturally, because there's a ton of things that you can do. And it's beyond just, well, I tried the nutrition, I tried to exercise, and it didn't work. Because pregnancy is a natural process. So if it's not happening, let's get to the bottom of why it's not happening. Long-winded answer for you, CHERYL. Sorry.
No, that many of mine are the same, so it's no problem. Well, before we go into, I think you mentioned, the last thing you said is like nutrition and exercise, which I think is kind of what everybody thinks about when you're preparing for fertility or preparing for a baby. But I think the one thing that you hit on that I think is maybe more important, and you actually said it's more important, is the, emotional and mental state of getting ready to, number one, not only, have the baby and have that change in your life, but just the process of knowing that you finally are ready for that and that you want to do that. Because for a lot of women, we spend like most of our lives trying not to get pregnant. And then,
yes,
it's not really a shock. And then when we finally try that, maybe there's some problems. So maybe if you could first talk a little bit about some of that, some tips or things that you've worked with people on for mentally and preparing mentally, spiritually, however you want to look at that. And then we can move into some of the other stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, thank you for bringing that up, because I think it's overlooked, and the big component with mental and emotional. So, right, it's not just the physical body, it's not just the mental and emotional, and the spiritual body is in there as well. But spirituality is very individual. It's very individualistic in terms of how you connect with a greater source, what you believe in, all of that kind of stuff. But it's really important to discover that. And I think females, like, we have a creator role. We're stepping into the creator role. And if you are like, my patients are very much like me, they're control freaks. They're high achieving women. They like to get things done, and they have big ambitions, and they want to do big things in the world. And that's a very yang energy. So from a TCM perspective, it's a go-getter energy, right? You're going to go and do stuff and get things accomplished. Where the creator role is very much a yin energy. So it's a really big shift into nurturing, into rest, into, kind of preservation of your nervous system. And so the shift first has to happen, I think, mentally and emotionally, to know that you're stepping into a different way of being. And that's the really big shift that has to happen, so you can start doing all the physical stuff. Because sometimes we're like, well, I eat well and I prepped all my meals and I did this. And it's like, you're bringing the same energy into something that needs to be done in a different, right? Like, why do I tell people to start cooking for themselves? Because it settles your nervous system in a different way. You start to smell the foods that you're cooking, and you're creating a relationship with it. But the goal is to switch you out of that fight or flight into the parasympathetic state. So recognizing that first shift of how much time do you actually spend in the fight or flight state versus in rest and digest. And know that pregnancy is the hardest thing that the female body will ever do. And it is the biggest change that you as a couple will ever go through. It is the most permanent change that you will ever go through, right? Like I say, we plan longer to buy a house, or we plan more for a wedding, and we spend more on a wedding than to prepare our own bodies by, doing some testing, figuring out our foods, cleaning up our diet and our environment, that kind of stuff. So it's backwards. So if we can switch that around and recognize what it is that we're doing, and we as females start to treat our bodies as the temple that it is to prepare it for this big adventure that it's going to do. And so, like I say, for myself and for my women that I help, it's you want to feel it confident in your body and you want to feel in control of your health. And so the women or the couples that are struggling with infertility usually don't feel very confident. They feel very out of control. And whether that's their menstrual cycle, their digestion, their sleep, their work environment, whatever it is. And a lot of it has to start with a mental shift of I'm stepping into a different way of being. What does that mean for me? What does my life look like now? How do I feel about saying no to a work project? How do I feel about saying no to a friend that I don't really want to hang out with, but I feel obligated to, or I feel guilty if I don't? Right? Like, how can I reserve that energy more because I'm getting ready to build a human from scratch? Like, that's what we're doing here, you guys. It is so incredible. And honestly, like, I didn't believe it the first time I was doing it when I had my daughter, because it was just like, there's no way that I'm growing a baby and she's going to be a human just like me. And so, just the second time around, I did everything on the physical level. Like, literally, I changed the diet, changed the exercise. I did everything by the books, but I also just penciled it in. I was like, I want to get pregnant on this date and I want to give birth on this date and it's going to go like this. And, that was the universe kicking me in the butt and saying, like, what, did you really think you could just put this into your schedule and have it? And that was that next piece of like, oh, I'm missing this big connection to a soul or to experience that I want to create that I feel like I missed the first time or that I just want to experience, right? And so that's why I really lean into the mental and emotional, because once you shift that, shifting the physical is really easy. That's the easy part.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to highlight something that you said for people that aren't as familiar with this, but you mentioned TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine.
Yes.
And then you also mentioned yin and yang, which as a person who's been into yoga for like half of my life now, over half my life, I'm very familiar with that term. And so for people that, just to highlight again what Dr. Levesque said, the yin energy is like very sort of female, creator, feminine energy, and yang is like go-getter. And so like you're saying, you work with a lot of type A people and they
Yes.
all tend to have that very young energy to get along and to be successful in a very male dominated world, right? So to shift out of that for some people can be a big challenge. But I think if you just know that, if you believe that it will not only enhance the pregnancy, but also possibly make it more possible, just because you're more relaxed and you're in nesting mode. And like you said, you're kind of out of this fight or flight, which I think is a very young kind of thing. And just the way that our society is, into more like nesting, preparing, getting ready for this little human that you're going to make. Like you said, it's just like really so amazing that you're literally building a human from scratch.
Yeah. I mean, the point to you, it's like whether you're a male or a female, however you identify, you have those energies. And it's really about balance. So whether you're a male that's more yin, and usually, right, like it's all about balance. It's not that one is good and one is bad, because if you don't go out and do things and accomplish things, those people tend to have a lot of depression, right? Because there's no fulfillment, there's no joy, they don't feel like they're doing anything, there's no purpose. But if you have too much of fulfillment and purpose and you're driving, then you're burning yourself out. And so it's this balance between, going out and giving energy and bringing it back in. And so recognizing that being pregnant is a very big energy out. And it's not just during the pregnancy. That's the shift that is the hardest to make for new parents. And for my husband and I, that I was like, okay, once the baby's out, then like, I'm not sure what I thought was going to happen, but that's actually the beginning, right? The pregnancy is just kind of the prelude to the thing that you're going to strap in for the next 18 years. And I think if we knew that and we looked at it, not just training for a marathon, but training for an Ironman that has an adventure race at the end of it, you'd be like, yeah, I don't need to rest up. Like, I think I need to fuel myself a little bit better. I think I need to get some training. You wouldn't just like step into it blindly and hope that it's going to work out. You would do some preparation for it. And so that's really my message, is like, let's do some preparation, because it's a really big deal, you guys. And because so many couples now are experiencing infertility. That's it's a different topic as to why that's happening. We can really see that. We can do through lab work. We can see who's going to struggle with that. We can see who's going to do much better and what your pregnancy is going to be like. Of course, it's not predictive 100%. Nothing is. But, if you have high liver enzymes, it's likely that you're going to be really nauseous throughout the pregnancy and you're probably going to have heartburn. So should we get those liver enzymes down before you get pregnant? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
I love the Iron Man example of parenting. That's fantastic.
Yes.
So since you mentioned it, now that we kind of got there and you talked about some testing, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the physical side of fertility and, the things that you do want to start changing, whether it's with your diet or your exercise, in addition to lab testing, to really prepare and make you, the most successful thing is, I guess, obviously getting pregnant and then seeing it through to the 9 months. So maybe just talk about, going into it as you're going into it. And then once we get into the pregnancy, if anything changes or if there's other things you should be doing once you're pregnant as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So the good news is when the diet and like the exercise routine and all those regimens, they stay the same they'll stay very similar to getting ready for pregnancy, throughout the pregnancy, and then postpartum. And of course, there's changes that you can make throughout pregnancy in different trimesters based on your needs. But I'm very much a proponent of individual customized healthcare. So I give generic advice for anybody, like I have my Fertility 101 program, who is anybody who's thinking about getting pregnant. So they're not struggling with fertility yet. They're not really sure that they will struggle with fertility, but these are the things that you should do in order to prepare yourself. And nutrition wise, we focus a lot on high quality fats. We focus a lot on high quality protein and eating enough protein, and then eating the rainbow. So some of the mistakes that I'll see people make with nutrition is that they'll actually diet because we're so afraid of getting fat during pregnancy that we're like, if I get really skinny before I get pregnant, then I won't get as fat. And so that thinking just needs to stop. And we need to really think about nourishing our body and preparing it to do a marathon / an Ironman / an adventure race. So you don't want to diet beforehand, and you want to stay away from any fads. So intermittent fasting, keto diet. I don't even know what else is out there anymore, but it's a whole food diet. Like, can you catch it? Can you pick it? Can you grow it? Those are the things, not out of can. And I say whole food diet, like if it has more than 4 ingredients, it's not a whole food. It's a processed food. So the more whole foods that we can have, and the greater the variety, making sure you're hitting those proteins and those fats and your, fruits and veggies galore, you're going to do really, really well. In terms of, and that's going to stay throughout, not just your pregnancy, not just pre-pregnancy, but through the pregnancy and postpartum. In terms of like exercise and stress, I just actually recorded a podcast on this myself, but with exercise, you want to do things that are going to decrease stress on your nervous system. So I always say that your nervous system needs to feel soothed and it needs to feel relaxed. And that's really hard to do now in our modern day and age, because we don't even realize that sitting and staring at our phone is actually really stimulating for our nervous system. Because it's lights that our nervous system doesn't recognize. Like at the end of the day, we are still cavemen. Biologically, that's where we are. But how we live now is very, very different. So we think that some of the things that we think we're doing to relax us are actually stimulating us. So we want to be aware of those things because you're adding more fuel to the fire. But with exercise, the biggest mistake that I see people make is, number one, they might not be exercising at all, which is a big problem. They need to exercise, build muscle mass, have a strong structure and increase blood flow to like their entire body, because that's not only going to help them through the pregnancy, but it's actually going to help the baby develop their blood cardiovascular system, their lungs, and improve circulation through the entire pregnancy. So people are either not exercising or they're overdoing it. If I see a woman who's trying to get pregnant, sitting on a spin bike and doing crazy spin classes, or hitting CrossFit, 5 days a week, whatever HIIT class, I know that there's an imbalance in the nervous system, because I used to train CrossFit and I love it and I still do, but how I do it now is very different. And so stepping away from those really high intensity things that are jacking up your nervous system, essentially. So those are the big lifestyle things that I would say that most people are doing it, but they're maybe missing the point a little bit. And you want to make sure that you are actually doing it well. That's another thing. We implement and you're like, I'm doing everything. And then I'll take through and I'll look at everything that they're doing. And it's like, okay, well, you're missing this and you're missing this and you're missing this. And so when it feels like you're doing everything and it's not working, just know that you're probably not doing everything and you probably need professional help at that point. And professional help is really valuable because then it's customized to you, and it should be customized to you, because what you eat, even though I say eat the rainbow, bell peppers might not sit well with you. And so you're eating all these bell peppers and it's causing inflammation in your system and breakouts and, immune system response. Whereas for me, they work great. That's like, you wouldn't really know that unless you do some testing or unless you do some like digging yourself as well, to be like, something is off in my digestion system. So yeah, I'm not sure if I even answered your question, but I know I can ramble.
No, so I guess the one thing I wanted to call out there when you were talking about, well, first of all, no high intensity exercise. I guess one of my thoughts was, that if they're not exercising already, is this a time to really start? And I am assuming as long as it's nothing too taxing, like take walks 10 minutes at a time or something, if you've never exercised before, something like that is still going to be pretty soothing to your nervous system and the stress release.
Sure. You need to exercise.
Yeah. And what about common things?
Common things for what?
Like when you were saying, you think everybody thinks they're doing everything, but they're not. Do you see any commonality into the things that you find are actually missing when they think that they're doing everything?
Yeah. So it's funny, like I just had a patient. So a big thing is environmental toxins. So people they know, they're like, okay, I should stay away from plastic. I should filter my water. I need to eat organic food. I need to meditate. So they'll kind of just hit all of those things. But the thing is, they're not implementing it to its full potential. So eating organic, I don't want to say that's pretty hard to miss, but like most people can figure that out, and eating local. Changing out plastic bottles, yeah, cool. Like you should get glass or stainless steel. And then we're talking about, for example, exercise. People will just say, oh yeah, I just need to exercise it. So they typically will overdo it, or they won't focus enough on strength training, or they just won't do it at all. And so if you're thinking about getting pregnant, absolutely, this is the best time to start an exercise routine, because I find sometimes we are externally motivated. So you're doing it for your future baby. If you just got pregnant and you don't exercise, you should still absolutely do an exercise routine. But do I recommend you start a new class or a new boot camp? No, you should, if it's your first time exercising, you just found out that you're pregnant, then you should hire a professional who's going to help you learn what exercises you can and shouldn't do, and as your body changes. But you should absolutely exercise. There's so much benefit to the baby when you're exercising, just from the point of getting enough blood flow and development of the cardiovascular system, as well as the lungs, and the benefit for you as well, like balancing your blood sugars, keeping your metabolism strong, your thyroid, adrenals, all that jazz. So exercise, yes, always. If you just found out though you're pregnant, then you might need to get some professional help versus say, oh, I'll just start it after pregnancy, because then you have a baby. Unlikely you're going to start a routine. Just to be realistic. Like then you're going to wait at least 6 months, and so it just extends the process. But some of the mistakes, for example, with filtering water, people will say, okay, well, I'm filtering my water and it's like a Brita filter. And a Brita filter filters 5 things out. We have 86,000 chemicals and toxins that got released into the environment in North America in the last decade. We don't even know the impact that those chemicals have, because we haven't had a chance to study them. And we don't even know the long-term impact. But what we do know is we're seeing infertility rates go through the roof for both male and female. We're seeing a lot more childhood diseases. We're seeing lower IQ in children. We're seeing chronic disease is developed in much younger population. And when you study and you pull tests from the tissue, they're filled with toxins. And we're only seeing a small amount of toxins. So the level of filtration that you need is much greater than your Brita water. And so when people say, oh yeah, I do that, it's like, oh, did you know that you actually have to just drink distilled water? Like that's the only way you can guarantee that there's no toxins. And I think that's the most underestimated thing. The same with food. Sometimes they're like, do I really need to eat organic? Do I really need to try to source local? And it's like, yeah, you do. You really do. Like if you are struggling with fertility, absolutely. And the way that I find that out is I test people and I'll be like, look at this. You have this in your tissue. This literally blocks this enzyme and prevents you from being able to get pregnant. And so there's an intention, there's an internal motivation, and then you customize the supplements, you customize, the detoxification protocol, and then it works. Versus a generic advice when I was first trying to get pregnant, if I just did some of the things that I'm telling everyone to do now, I would have had a much better pregnancy. But my patients who struggle with infertility, that's not enough for them. So you have to just go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, the water thing is interesting because I was looking into that recently for myself. We didn't know if we were going to do a whole house system, but one of the things I discovered that I didn't even really know was an option is a countertop reverse osmosis system. And they're actually on Amazon. They're not ridiculously expensive. And I'm actually planning to write about that at some point, kind of look into them a little bit more and actually, pick one that I think filters the things, because what you're saying about environmental toxins is not only that, but waste going into our water system. I heard one person talk about the, like all the birth control hormones basically end up in our water system. So it's no wonder that people are imbalanced and that men have just as much issue as women do.
That's it. It's like, why are men all of a sudden have breast tissue and breast cancer, which is, not unheard of, but it's not common. And then, it's coming up more, in weight gain in areas that are more prevalent for women as opposed to males. And the research, when I develop my programs and my goal, it's like, this is what I say, like, I don't do my own taxes. I don't do my own taxes for a reason, because what I know about taxes is this much versus what my accountant knows about taxes is this much. And so I want to learn and want to make sure that, I'm in the right hands, but I don't sit, because I don't study that all day, every day. It's not something that intrigues me. So I would learn from 10 years ago and would just continue to apply that information. And that's kind of the objection that we'll get with people now. They say like, well, my mom never had to do that, or this person never had to do that. But we know different now. And so, for example, with reverse osmosis, I have a reverse osmosis system, but it actually doesn't filter out all the toxins. It was what we knew even 5 years ago. Like that was the gold standard. So distilled water is now a gold standard. So buying a distiller is going to go way further down, and that the water actually gets filtered completely. And so sometimes it could be annoying because you're like, but didn't I say like this is the thing or this is, but that's the benefit of working with a professional. So you're not wasting any time or wasting any money thinking like, oh, what about this or what about this? Because the truth is every single company is just trying to market and sell their product. And it's not to say that they're trying to rob you or provide misinformation. They're just providing the information that they know that's best. And we have so much information out there now that if you get somebody who is gonna, tell you, hey, don't do this, do this, you're much more likely to succeed in your journey. Because I know you mentioned about having friends who are struggling with infertility. Most of my patients who come to me feel really unheard and unacknowledged by the doctor, and they just kind of feel like a lab rat. And they're just, oh, do this. And then if you're going the medical route, you just feel like a number, a petri dish, like take these hormones, do this and that. And it actually messes up the female body even more so, and then sets them up for issues in menopause if they happen to get pregnant, through their IVF journey.
Well, and for some people, though, I feel like, that's really what they're left with because of all these things, because of our environment and the stress and all of it. So I guess that's a next topic to move into. So when you're working with people, obviously you're hoping to get them before they get to that point so that they can shift into maybe a more natural way of doing it. But say that still has all failed. Are there particular tips that you have for women that are going the IVF route? Anything different that they need to do than what we've already discussed, or additional things that they can do to prepare?
Yeah. I mean, if it's like first time IVF versus, second, third, fourth, fifth, for first time IVF, I'm going to bring it back to the mental and emotional component. Like, ask yourself if you feel like this is really going to work. Because sometimes women will feel pressured into, because the desire to have a child is so strong, the actions become from a place of desperation as opposed to clarity and kind of hope, if you will, because hope still has more positive versus desperation. It's like, I'll do anything. And I've had women who've had failed IVF, and I asked them, like, did you think that it was going to work for you? And they were just like, no, I really didn't. Like, something just felt off. And so if you have that voice, just know that right there shuts down your chances of it succeeding. And don't get me wrong, like, I know you want to believe, that it's going to work, and that's different, wanting it to work versus is it going to work? And that's just spending some quiet time with yourself and quieting the noise in your head to be like, what am I feeling today? Like, how am I feeling about the next steps moving forward? What is my body doing? Because a lot of the times it's like women have just been through the ringer, even if they haven't started even thinking about IVF, but they've been trying. And it's like getting your menstrual cycle every month when you're trying is like the most devastating thing. It's this big reminder of how big of a failure you are and how everything is wrong in your life, and you just can't even do the thing that your body was built to do. And so if we can turn that negative self-talk towards being more curious and more, I don't want to say proactive is not the right word, because usually those women are already doing everything that they can, but it's finding the voice to advocate for yourself and say, I know that there's something still missing, and not choosing IVF as the last resort because of desperation, but because you really do think, you believe in that modern science is going to help and work, and make sure it's a doctor that you actually feel comfortable with. If it's your fourth, fifth round, whatever, however many rounds, make sure you're doing something that's different from every time. Like, you got to learn something from each procedure, because the biggest mistake that I see, and really like the definition of insanity, is doing the exact same thing and expecting different results, right? And sometimes they'll just say, do the same thing, do this. Okay, well, maybe the next one will work. But I've had women do nothing different, and then all of a sudden they went and they did acupuncture, and they relaxed their nervous system, and they did a little bit more preparation work, and they got pregnant on the fourth IVF. So do something different in between each one, whether it's in your control or the doctor, like whether it's the doses, whether it's whatever it is. But if we just do the exact same thing and you feel you feel more depleted, you feel more tired, then the chances of it working are much lower. And to those women who are listening and feel like they've lost hope, it's like, just know that your body is this beautiful, beautiful thing that can heal and has the power to heal and to create life. And maybe it's not right now, but there is still always hope. Like, I'll never say never until I see all the tests, until I've done all the, outside of the traditional blood work that most people do, to really take a look into the body and be like, what's the body trying to tell us? Because sometimes we have a trauma that we have to heal, because women store a lot of trauma in our womb, and sometimes it's not the right partner. And sometimes it's a nutrient missing, like sometimes it's a parasite that we have to kill before you can get pregnant. And so it could be really simple, and sometimes it's a little bit more complicated. But if you have somebody who's going to hold your hand through the process, you're going to find those answers, and you're going to have peace. And that's really the end goal.
Yeah, and probably feeling like you're being proactive and having somebody on your team, and all of that feeds into the emotional and mental side of it that leads to more success, I would imagine, as well. But you did mention something there that I'm just curious if it came out just because this is something that you see work often, or if that was just a random thing. But acupuncture, is that something that people have had a lot of success with?
Yeah, I find I actually partner up with a bunch of acupuncturists because my practice is fully virtual. But so, I have a acupuncturist that I recommend here in Calgary, Alberta. And, I'll have one in Ontario, or depending kind of on what I hear. But acupuncture is really great because it helps to balance, like it looks into the body in a different way, and it looks into that yin and yang energy. It's, if you don't get anything from it, it's just, you get the nervous system soothing and relaxation, something that is taking care of you, bringing more energy into you. And, when I work with an acupuncturist, like if it's a really tough case, they can do all the needles and they'll do some herbs to stimulate digestion or to stimulate blood flow or whatever, but they don't have the testing. And so I find as a naturopath, I can run for environmental toxins. I can run a stool analysis and look to see what's going on in your gut. I can look at your blood work. I can look at, your cortisol levels and how you're breaking down your hormones. And then working synergistically with an acupuncturist can really, really help and do some magic. So I believe it's like there's never just this one thing or one person that's going to solve everything for you. So I believe in kind of figuring out what it is that this person is missing. And then, I refer out to like, hey, you would really benefit from this, and you would benefit from this, and you should try this. And the good thing, most fertility patients are very open and receptive. But yeah, I do find that acupuncture can be really, really powerful.
Yeah. And I would think as far as, possible adjuncts to whatever else you're doing with IVF, it's not another drug. It's not an herb. It's not anything like that. It's very low risk. Like the worst that you'll say, like maybe you just feel a little relaxed after and that's it. Maybe you don't think it really helped, but you never know. And I actually got really lucky. I found a practitioner. So I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and this is probably, 10 or 15 years ago, but she actually ran her practice on a sliding scale, which was really fantastic since it's not very much covered by insurance. Some insurance companies are moving towards that now. But it was really nice because at the time my whole life situation was very different. And so I appreciated being able to try it and do it pretty affordably. And I think that that's not that uncommon in that practice because I think they just genuinely want to help people and want people to have access to I don't know, you don't want to call it really a technology, but to the benefits of acupuncture.
Absolutely.
So I want to be respectful of your time, and we're kind of getting a little long here, but I want to make sure that you touch on, sharing with people about your programs, how they can work with you. You said you do virtual consults, so it sounds like you can work with anybody in the world. Can you just share a little bit more about that part of your world?
Yeah, I will. Absolutely. And I wanted to touch base on, like the insurance-based model, because I think that's something we as alternative healthcare providers will always stumble against. And I'm really trying to change that, because when you think about when you use insurance on your car, it's when you've gotten into a car wreck. Like when the car is totaled, you wouldn't go to insurance when you had a scratch or you needed to change the oil, or the filter in your car, but you still need to do those things. And that's the same, for your house. You don't want to use insurance on the house to patch up the wall or whatever when it's really big things happening. And so I'm a big proponent of being proactive, right? Again, if you think you have a hard time losing weight, if you have a hard time sleeping, you have low energy, you have acne after the age of 25, then those are all signs and symptoms of something being off in your system. And usually it's hormonal or nutritional, digestive, which all can impact your fertility. And again, when I have infertility cases, I've never had somebody say, they'll say, I'm in good health, but I have chronic fatigue and I have immune system function and I'm celiac. And it's like, so is our perception of what healthy is really changing? And just to shift people's minds about, like, if you invest into yourself and do a little bit of that acupuncture that's outside of your insurance, like I guarantee you're never going to regret it. You're going to be like, oh, I hated feeling so relaxed after that appointment. I know it's really hard to say, I'm going to invest and I'm going to spend this money that's not insurance. But the truth is that model is so broken, and we need to stand up for it as people, because, as a practitioner, I am seeing people sicker and sicker at a younger and younger age. And so that's hard. That's why we're seeing so much infertility. And to wrap up basically of how you can work with me, I have a free Facebook group. It's called Dr. Jane's Natural Fertility Group. And I share a lot of, incredible kind of content on how to exercise, nutrition for fertility, sleep for fertility, that kind of stuff. And from there, I also have a Fertility 101 program. And that's just a self-paced online program, 5 modules. Here are the things this is really great for someone who is thinking about starting to try, or maybe they just started trying, not too serious yet, versus if you've been trying for, over a year, over 6 months, and you're ready to kind of get some more answers and you want to work with someone who's actually going to provide you those answers instead of you having to ask your doctor about, what about this lab work? What about this lab work? And what does this mean? Then booking a free 15-minute discovery call to see if I'm the right person to help you. Because if I am, that's great. And if I'm not, I'll make sure to point you in the right direction. It definitely is about making sure that you feel supported through this journey. And, like I said, you feel more confident and in control of it, as opposed to someone else is telling you what to do, where you should go, and how your body should work. All that kind of stuff is bringing that control back to you. And, that's kind of the best way to work with me. And when it comes to my programs, I have online content. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I run lab work. It's a very much customized to you program, but my process is the same. I start with an initial consult. We do some labs. I look at the labs that you've already done, and then we get to work. We look and see what's missing: sleep, hydration, movement, nutrition, supplements. It's all based from your symptoms and your labs. And so we're filling in those holes. It's no longer generic advice. It's advice that's specific to your needs. So then we see those results fairly quickly.
Yeah. And then just to point out the difference from traditional kind of, instead of healthcare, it's more like sick care. Like you said, it's more for major things. Traditional healthcare and traditional doctors are not always that good about this kind of thing, where it's like preparing you for a very natural process, and optimizing your health is very different than just taking care of you when you're sick. So
disease care. Yeah. You call it sick care. I call it disease care. It's the same thing. And what I think we forget is that, like, they're run by the pharma industry. So if they sell more drugs, they're making more money. And, not to say like the supplement industry is all, like, everything is a money industry nowadays, but you just want to be aware of, like, where's your money going? And not even that, but like, how do you feel? How do you feel after spending time with this person? I think for some reason we put the traditional medical system on a pedestal and say, well, I felt like crap after going to see that doctor. I felt so belittled, and I felt, broken and hurt. Like, I've had so many women come and cry to me, but they will still go back to that doctor because they feel like they don't have an option. And it's like, you have an option. You do. You have an option not to go to that same person. You have an option to go find it might be a more expensive option. It might be a little bit more difficult to find, but that's the whole process of advocating for yourself, is not allowing yourself to be treated in a way that you don't want to feel. So like, if you feel unheard and unacknowledged, why would you go back to, like, you would never go back to a hairdresser that made you feel like crap. So why do we do that with the traditional medical system, right? Like, it's not okay, you guys. And I had an experience with a doctor. My daughter had an ear infection, and it's like, the guy barely looked at us, gave us a prescription, and walked away. And the prescription was, antibiotics for 10 days, 3 times a day. And it was this like bubblegum pink. I didn't even know what the ingredients were. And I was so mad because I'm like, well, she can swallow pills. Why are you giving her this liquid full of sugar that's actually going to cause her infection to go worse, right? And so I'm not going back to that doctor. Like, that's just my personality, right? It's like, no way, Jose. I know that there's better out there, and it's unfortunate to have those experiences, but we have to stand up for that.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And it is a shame that this is the way our system is, both in Canada and the US. I mean, if something really bad happens to you, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but here. But if it's just trying to get healthier, this is, unfortunately, the US is not the place. Our food system and everything else about it is just, unfortunately, really a mess. But that's a whole topic for a different day, right?
It is. But I think the people are the change, right? I think the more we take it into our hands and we do, it, like, the change can happen. It's just going to be slow. Like, we can't expect it overnight. And, you know, I don't know about you, but I feel best when I take control of the situation. If I know that here are the things that I need to do, like, my goal is to never rely on the traditional system, or as little as I need to, right? And because I've seen my grandma go through it, I see my parents having to go through it, and it's like, no thanks. Here are the things that I know what I need to do, and that means being proactive. That means, you know, investing into yourself now instead of waiting for the car crash. You know, and that brings me back to, like, is acupuncture or is seeing a naturopath or buying these tests really worth it? Well, it just depends on what you value. And, you know, to me, it's like, yeah, it's absolutely worth it. And I think it's worth it for a lot of people. They're just maybe scared, or maybe they've had a bad experience and they're afraid to try again. But, you know, if I go to a gym and I meet a bad personal trainer, it doesn't mean I don't need to go to the gym anymore. It just means I need a different gym, right? I need a different personal trainer. And so that's the same thing.
Yep, couldn't agree more. And also, obviously, all of these things are so important for people, whether they're trying to get pregnant or not, just for your general health. Yep. Like you said, find what you value, and then, you know, make these choices to be in alignment with that.
Of course.
So anyway, I just want to thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge today. I think there has been some really awesome practical advice. People learned how they can work with you if they're looking for this type of support during their fertility journey. And I love that you put the emphasis on that. So again, thank you so much. And hopefully the people will find you. Can you say, I don't think you said the name of your website just before we go here.
Yeah, it's just drjanelevesque.com. And my Instagram and Facebook is all at Dr. Jane Levesque.
And that'll all be in the show notes because her last name is spelled a little differently. It's Levesque, but all the links will be in the show notes. So you don't have to remember that, but I just wanted to mention it in case you were trying to spell it phonetically. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and take care.
Thank you.